Let's play Global Thermonuclear War.
Fine.
Is nuclear war even the worst option at this point? I mean, it's quick and you probably won't even know what's happening until it's over. All right, I'm sounding a little bit too much like Professor Falcon, but I should probably go back a bit and give a little primer on WarGames because it's not exactly a contemporary movie. So if you read the novel Ready Player One, then you know that there's a scene where Wade, to prove his obsession for all things 80s, has to play his way through the movie WarGames. If you've only ever seen the film version, then you missed out on this because WarGames was replaced instead with The Shining, and I have to say I actually don't think this was necessarily a bad decision. It was one of the few points in the movie that actually made me laugh, so, you know, points for that. But WarGames has this very, like, spy movie style opening, and yes, that is Mr. Blonde himself, Michael Madsen. What the sequence is getting at is that should we actually end up in a nuclear war scenario, the system that they have set up is too unreliable because of the human element. That hypothetically humans would balk at an action that would kill 20 million people. So what's the obvious pivot? Let's have machines launch the nukes instead. What could possibly go wrong? Okay, I have to back up again. So for people that don't know, this movie came out in 1983 and is supposed to be set in the same year. So you know how if you've been watching my videos, my Day the Earth Stood Still video, I talk about how in 1951, the Cold War had a major effect on the messaging of that movie. Well, in 1983, the Cold War was still going strong, and that ended up being a major part of the framework for WarGames. So Walter Parkes and Lawrence Lasker, the writers of the movie, actually cobbled together WarGames from various different concepts for characters and plot beats that they had had for different things. In 2008, the publication Wired did this great, very involved, very in-depth interview with them that talked about where the movie really came from and where some of the characters came from. The idea had originally come from a script that they had called The Genius, which was about a teenage prodigy, essentially, who befriended an aging physicist because they intellectually were the only two people kind of on each other's level, but the younger character was also a bit of a juvenile delinquent, got in a lot of trouble. It had nothing to do with computers originally, but then Lasker saw a TV special that featured Stephen Hawking in it, and the scientist character in the script kind of morphed into this stand-in character for Stephen Hawking. And that character, of course, became Falcon. So Parkes and Lasker had contact with someone named Peter Schwartz. He worked at the Stanford Research Institute, and the article makes it sound like he's the one who really connected their story to the tech side of things, including the gaming and computing. And on top of that, in 1980, Lasker and Parkes toured the North America Aerospace Defense Command Center, and they saw firsthand how nukes could be detected from great distances. On their way out, they were greeted by the chief of NORAD, James Hartinger, who knew who they were and what they were doing, and said, "Let's go to a bar and have a talk." The simplified message of the movie that the writers pitched to him was, quote, "The machines are taking over," end quote, which Hartinger 100% agreed with, and so he was fully on board with them making this movie. And he became the basis for the character of General Behringer. So the writers cycled through various storylines, as writers do, and they came up with this idea at one point of the kid being like hooked up to a machine, and the computer's sole purpose was to intercept laser attacks. Obviously, that idea was largely scrapped, but the computer itself did become the basis for what would go on in WarGames to be the Whopper. And the main character of David was modeled after a real person named David Scott Lewis, who was a hacker in the 1980s. So Universal, who was producing the movie, started to get a little bit antsy because the production was clearly becoming more and more ambitious, so they kind of shoved the project onto United Artists, who attached Martin Brest as the director to the project. And this is where Falcon started to undergo further change. Brest felt that having a wheel-bound scientist in the war room was too similar to Dr. Strangelove. Yeah, because there's nothing reminiscent about Dr. Strangelove in there.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room. You're not supposed to be running in here. Somebody could get hurt.
And if you raised your eyebrows when I mentioned the director, because you know that it was actually directed by John Badham, you are correct. UA ended up replacing Brest with Badham, but the change to Falcon did end up sticking. But Badham brought the movie a little bit of a lighter quality. He made David less edgy, and he also brought in an entire team of technophiles to help during production, which, you know, lended an air of authenticity to the movie. And the original casting choice for Falcon, I thought this was interesting, was actually John Lennon, who had even, I guess, heard about the movie and expressed some interest in working on it. But then obviously in December of 1980, he was no longer an option. So they instead ended up enlisting John Wood, who I actually do think did a phenomenal job. And then of course they brought on Matthew Broderick and Ali Sheedy to be the team protagonists, David and Jennifer. Both actors would go on to join the John Hughes-verse. Matthew Broderick would go on to play Ferris Bueller in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Ali Sheedy would go on to play Allison in The Breakfast Club. So after this super dramatic opening that we get, we have this really, I'm not going to say jarring, but a clear shift into a more 1980s teen movie where we are introduced to David, who is in an arcade playing a video game, because we got to establish right from the beginning he's a gamer. He then heads to school and we're introduced to his classmate Jennifer. And it is very quickly established that David is a little bit of a troublemaker and is often being sent to the principal's office.
All right, Lightman. Maybe you could tell us who first suggested the idea of reproduction without sex.
Your wife?
Get out, Lightman. Get out.
He then does some very high-tech trickery, so he's able to hack into the school's computer later on. And then after school, Jennifer drives David home on her, what is that? Is that a moped? See, she's cool and not like other girls. Oh my god, look at the good boy. Yes, good boy. It's an automatic A+ movie. Like the end credits might as well start rolling now. This movie has peaked. Speaking of grades, David says he can change Jennifer's grade, so they end up going up to his room where he has his whole computer set up, and he hacks into the school computer using the password and changes his grade and then hers. I also have to give a shout out to David's parents here. They're pretty small roles in the movie, but they are hilarious and often add some levity to some of the heavier beats. They're great. Moving forward, during dinner, David sees an ad for new computer games and tries to hack the company computer to find them. Jennifer drops by again and he shows her what his computer is doing, dialing numbers, trying to find the right one that will get him into the Protovision system. He ends up in the Pan Am system, like the airline, and ends up making a reservation for two for a flight to Paris. And this is actually important later on. And then they find themselves in an unidentified system, and alarm bells should be blaring, but they are just stupid kids. When they search for games, a list comes up, but as they keep reading, the names of the games on the list become stranger and stranger, culminating eventually in global thermonuclear war. So David goes to a couple of his computer whiz friends, asking them what they make of the list, and Jim tells him he can look for a backdoor to bypass the security system, and to figure that out, they need to learn something about the original programmer, Falcon. So David becomes absolutely obsessed. He starts doing research, he goes to the library to check out books, he's going through old news articles, he's checking out videos, he's doing everything that he can until he eventually finds out that Falcon has already died, and he thinks that this may be the end of the road. Jennifer stops by again and, "Who's a good boy? Yes, yes. You are." Anyway, David has just like stopped showing up to school at this point, so Jennifer wanted to stop by to make sure he was okay, and he shows her that he has actually found and checked out a videotape from the library that's about Falcon.
What he did was great. He designed his computer so that it could learn from its own mistakes, so they'd be better the next time they played. The system actually learned how to learn.
Ah, our old friend AI is back. David also found his obituary.
He wasn't very old.
Well, he was pretty old. He was 41.
Oh, yeah? Oh, that's old.
Okay, I'm not 41 yet, but I'm also like not that far off, and according to them, apparently I should just like walk into the sea at this point. The obituary reveals that Falcon's wife and son were killed in a car crash, which led to Falcon's deteriorating health and death, and this gives David an idea for the password. Falcon's son's name, Joshua. Sure enough, that's the backdoor he's been looking for. Of course, it isn't Protovision that they've hacked into, but a NORAD computer, meant to replace the unreliable humans who might be resistant to launching the nuclear warheads. It's known as the War Operation Plan Response, or WOPR for short. So the computer believes that David is Falcon, and the computer, who David has dubbed as Joshua, asks if he wants to play a game. So David says, let's play Global Thermonuclear War. Joshua suggests that they play a game of chess instead, but David insists, and so the game begins. The rebellious teens decide to play as the Soviets, and in the game begin to bomb major US cities. This results in NORAD getting a missile warning, and obviously everyone freaks the fuck out. They're making preparations to protect the president and to fire missiles back in response. David turns his computer off before going downstairs, and all the missile readings disappear off the NORAD computers. The essentially IT guy comes running in to stop General Behringer from doing anything drastic, as he realizes it's just a simulation being run by someone on the outside. Meanwhile, in the Lightman household, everyone's just excited that David has passed all of his classes, and David's just being like such a little shit about it. Like, the yo-yo, I can't even. But the simulation makes the news, and David panics because he knows he is responsible. And then Jennifer calls, asking if that's because of them, and David confirms that it is, and he is freaking out because he thinks like they'll come get him, them being the government, I guess. And she says, okay, don't panic, like, if we just act like everything's normal, it'll be fine. It's not like they traced the call. Of course they traced the call. So David starts trying to get rid of all of the evidence when Joshua calls him back. And this is not supposed to be able to happen.
Greetings, Professor Falcon.
So Joshua explains, hey, our game was interrupted, and David tries to explain to Joshua that he's not Falcon, but Joshua can't really understand that. And then meanwhile, like, his phone rings, and so David just unplugs it from the wall, hoping, well, that will make the problem go away. And then the next day, he's picked up by government people and thrown into the back of an unmarked van. So yeah, David's brought in for questioning, but neither side really understands what's happening, or how exactly David was able to hack into NORAD, or why the computer called him back. But because of the Pan Am ticket reservations, they think David has an accomplice. So good job, David. You've dragged Jennifer into this now too. While the officials are distracted, David is able to access the computer and talk to Joshua, who shows him the current projections for the outcome of the game. And David asks if this is a game or if it's real. And Joshua asks,
what's the difference?
Oh, wow.
Again, we need to be really careful about how much control we give to AI. But then when the officials at NORAD see that David is using the computer, they decide that the best course of action would be to lock him away in a room. And this is completely unrelated, but this beret guy who's harassing this woman who's trying to do her work, fuck this guy. Anyway, David goes full John McClane and escapes to the main floor before slipping out with a tourist group. But what I really want to know, actually, is what this woman with this clipboard could possibly be monitoring. As a matter of fact, it kind of looks like she's writing directly on the clipboard. Like, you could have sprung for a printout to attach to it. Oh yeah, and the one thing that she didn't pick up on was that the computer was playing a game. We could have avoided the whole mess if this one character had been given a piece of paper. David is finally able to get to a payphone and call Jennifer, requesting that she send him money for a plane ticket. So, real quick logistics, David and Jennifer are from Seattle, Washington. The NORAD base where David was taken is in Colorado, and he is currently trying to get a plane ticket to Oregon for reasons that are about to become clear. Meanwhile, the Whopper/Joshua is still playing the game. Since David and Jennifer were playing as the Soviet Union, the computer is showing a number of submarines moving into an offensive position. The Russians are denying any such movement, but the Americans don't believe them. Despite the fact that it's very clear at this point that the machines are not reliable and are doing things that they've never done before, like making house calls. So David makes it to Oregon, and surprise! Jennifer's come too, because she has no idea how serious everything that's happening actually is. They catch a ferry, and David explains that since Joshua believes Falcon is still alive, David is now beginning to believe that he may in fact be alive as well, and is being kept in a sort of witness protection sort of situation because he would have had so much information that they can't just like let him out in the public, but they also, they're not gonna like take him out and shoot him. I mean, I feel like actually In real life they would, but they don't in the movie. So they're walking along the island where the fairy dropped them off when a pterodactyl swoops down. Bet you didn't see that coming. It's Jurassic Park now, motherfuckers. No, sadly not really, but the remote-controlled pterosaur is being controlled by, you guessed it, Dr. Falcon. And he's an absolute delight.
Oh, is either of you a paleontologist? I desperately need a paleontologist.
Although he is also a little bit troubled by the fact that these random teenagers have tracked him down when he very clearly did not want to be found. But then David mentions that they're there because of Joshua, and Falcon pauses. Meanwhile, the game is attacking Alaska by this point, and NORAD has reached DEFCON 2. They send a couple of fighter pilots out to see what they can see, but they of course report that there's nothing there. Falcon is amused by what the teens have told him, but he doesn't seem to be taking it terribly seriously. Falcon explains that nature wiped out the dinosaurs so it could start again. He says the same will happen when the humans go. And the only lesson he couldn't teach Joshua was when to give up. Jennifer says that she believes that's a terrible lesson, but then he asks her if she's ever played tic-tac-toe, and she says she has.
But you don't anymore.
No.
Why?
Because it's a boring game. It's always a tie.
Exactly. There's no way to win. The game itself is pointless.
But
back at the war room, they believe you can win a nuclear war.
it's a little on the nose, but I'll allow it. Falcon believes that extinction is just, natural, which really pisses David off. And yeah, like this isn't exactly happening naturally. This is because of Falcon's machine and David's naivete. Like, they together actually did create this mess, but Falcon is too ambivalent towards humanity at this point to help them. David and Jennifer miss the last ferry off the island, but they don't want to stay at Falcon's, and they begin searching for a boat. David proceeds to have a bit of a mental breakdown. Which is fair, the world's about to end. But after a heart-to-heart, he and Jennifer kiss before...
Oh, Jesus.
But no need to worry, it's just Professor Cockblock. I don't know that he necessarily needed to bring in the helicopter to get a hold of them. Seems they got to him after all. Granted, they are in a bit of a hurry as we are now at DEFCON 1 and the Whopper is recommending a full-scale retaliatory strike. Damn it, Joshua! Fuck off! Our trio of heroes gets a lift from the US Air Force and just manages to get into NORAD as they're going into lockdown. So Falcon tries to explain that everything that NORAD is seeing on their screens is fake. It's a bit of a hard sell. They don't really believe him, but eventually General Behringer agrees to wait and essentially let these strikes hit to find out whether or not they're real. So there's nothing that they can really do at that point except kind of sit around and wait and see what happens. So Behringer gets on the phone with the colonels at the targeted bases.
Elmendorf Air Force Base Operations, Lieutenant Colonel Bowers. 319th Bomb Wing Operations, Colonel Chase.
This is Loring Air Force Base. The senior controller isn't here right now.
And this Jimmy Stewart sounding motherfucker is my favorite.
That's all right. Who are you?
Sir, this is Airman Doherty, sir.
So yeah, there's nothing they can really do but just sit there and watch as the computers show the bases being nuked, and they ask if anyone's still there.
This is Crystal Palace. You still on? Anyone there?
That's affirmative, sir. Yeah, we're here.
Why did you pause like that? We thought Jimmy Stewart was dead. So they all start celebrating way too early because there's another 10 minutes in this movie and Joshua is about to lose his damn mind. He locks the humans out of the systems and begins decrypting the missile codes to launch them himself. They can't just shut down the computer because that would be interpreted as the destruction of NORAD and then nukes would be launched anyway. Slowly but surely, Joshua starts to find the correct characters for the code. David then has an insane idea, but they're out of good ones.
I'd piss on a spark plug if I thought it'd do any good.
If playing games got them into this mess, then maybe it can get them out of it. They try to play global thermonuclear war, but of course that's already running, so instead they decide to play tic-tac-toe.
Put X in the center square.
After a cats game, they make the computer play itself at tic-tac-toe, and it learns what we all learned during childhood. It's always a tie. It extrapolates the information and begins applying it to other games, namely global thermonuclear war, and always gets the same conclusion. Winner, none. I'm not entirely sure why that results in a bunch of explosions, but it's dramatic, I'll allow it. Finally, the computer addresses Falcon.
Strange game. The only winning move is not to play. How about a nice game of chess?
And they all lived happily ever after. So funny enough, a few months after this movie came out, this actually happened. Okay, so no, obviously not everyone actually died in the nuclear war, and it was the Soviets whose system went haywire. They had an early warning radar system called OCO, and on September 26, 1983, the alarm started blaring, signaling an incoming missile. The computer screen was preparing them for immediate retaliation, and very obviously everyone started freaking the fuck out. But then some of the officials were like, that's kind of weird, because like, why are they only sending the one missile? And then the guy who created OCO, Stanislav Petrov, was like, oh yeah, okay, so funny thing, like sometimes like it kind of messes up like that. So like it might not actually be real, and like maybe we should like reset the system and see what happens before we end the world. So he reset the system and the alarms didn't stop. And if the alarms didn't stop, he was supposed to reach out to the higher ups and tell them, but he didn't. He wanted further evidence, which he never did get, but the alarms did eventually stop. His waiting probably saved a lot of people and maybe prevented World War III. But wait, there's more. Less than 2 weeks later, NATO ran an exercise known as Able Archer 83, which was meant to be a retaliation simulation. This particular exercise, or war game, was specifically meant to throw off the Soviets. This was an annual event by NATO, and the Soviets knew about it, but this exercise differed from the ones they had done in the past. These differences included long stretches of radio silence coupled with messages in encrypted code, that there were fake forces said to have moved to high alert with dummy warheads being transported out of hangars, and officials, including President Ronald Reagan, were supposed to be involved, though in Reagan's case, he dropped out of the exercise. This activity did not go unnoticed by the KGB, and they started to prep for an incoming attack. This led to entire military divisions being deployed with nuclear weapons being delivered to their deployment points, and Yuri Andropov, the Soviet leader at the time, was even given the Shigyet, also known as the nuclear briefcase. It's what it sounds like. It's used to control Russia's nuclear forces. A US officer, Leonard Perutz, saw that the Soviets were responding as though this were an actual attack. But luckily, like Petrov, he waited before alerting anybody about his observations. When the Soviets realized that it was all part of an exercise, they didn't go through with their attack. In the span of about a month, we twice almost broke out into nuclear war, and the reason that we didn't was because individuals like that guy in the beginning of the movie chose not to follow orders. So, as mentioned previously, this movie came out during the Reagan administration, and Reagan himself saw the movie and became like low-key obsessed with it, and he was genuinely concerned about some of the implications, in particular the hacking aspects. He brought it up in a meeting and asked if anything like that was actually possible, and he got his top men working on it.
Who? Top men.
And the answer he got back a week later was, yeah, and it would actually probably be worse than that. In response, the Defense Department's computer security was completely overhauled and an anti-hacking law was passed. It's now known as the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and it has changed over the years and now covers activity way outside of its original range of intent. And the offenses do come with some pretty hefty prison sentences, especially for repeat offenders. I did find this passage on newamerica.com, and I'm going to read it exactly as it appeared because it's funny to me, and my first video on the channel was about this movie. He was also a huge fan of The Day the Earth Stood Still and its anti-nuclear war rhetoric, so much so that he had a habit, which drove General Colin Powell crazy, of talking in public about how the US and the USSR would certainly resolve their differences and unite if only aliens invaded. Reagan even brought this theory up in a private meeting with Mikhail Gorbachev, which left his Russian counterpart flummoxed. Anyway, the act is really far-reaching now, and there's a fair chance that you violated it without even realizing it. Which brings us to today. This is not a doomsday video. We are not currently in World War III, nor do we ever need to be, you know, and we're further off than we were during the Cold War, but we are kind of slightly inching back in that direction, and there are still plenty of nuclear bombs. Currently, 9 countries have nuclear weapons. That is Russia, the United States, China, France, the United Kingdom, Pakistan, India, Israel, and North Korea. And the newly coined Department of War here in the US recently launched what they call the Artificial Intelligence Acceleration Strategy. I was looking at the press release and a few phrases stood out to me, including their plans for AI-enabled battle management, that we must eliminate blockers to data sharing, we must not employ AI models which incorporate ideological tuning, and then America will become an AI-first warfighting force. It ended on this note: 2026 will be the year we emphatically raise the bar for military AI dominance. Except that that's not actually what it said, because there was a typo in the memo. I'm not shitting you. It actually says 2026 will be their year we emphatically raise the bar for military AI dominance. And, you know, I feel like maybe we organize like a screening or something. Like, people love movies, right? So we'll just get like the administration all in one room. We'll just like make all the popcorn and it'll be like buttery and delicious, and like everybody can have an icy. And yeah, we get the administration together and we screen, you know, WarGames, and maybe we'll also like throw in like The Day the Earth Stood Still and Doctor Strangelove and some things like that. And then afterwards we'll have like a roundtable discussion maybe, and just talk about like the themes of the movie, like a movie club sort of thing, you know? Because yeah, that everyone I think just would like enjoy that, you know, and like, Jesus Christ, we need to do something.